What's up though? Today in this video, I'm going to be talking about two YouTubers, Critical Drinker and Moist Critical. They both make movie reviews as part of their content. This video is to show how they fail on many aspects. I do plan on releasing a larger video on Critical Drinker, but for now, let's talk about his video on Joker 2.
The first Joker movie was one of those rare moments of cinematic serendipity where everything that should have been wrong somehow came together to become absolutely right. A low-budget origin story about a Batman villain that nobody asked for, directed by a guy best known for making comedies that proved the law of diminishing returns, and shadowed by media accusations of promoting violence, misogyny, and generalized buffoonery. It was a film that seemingly had everything going against it, but somehow turned out way better than it had any right to be. A movie with a wonderfully unreliable narrator, driven by a superb performance by Joaquin Phoenix, and an ending that left the audience with more questions than answers. It was a perfect one-and-done movie that told its story and told it well. No need to do anything more with a character like that, because it would just cheapen the experience.
I agree with his praises of the first film, until he says the film was a perfect one-and-done movie, that it told its story and it told it well. There's no need to do anything with a character like that, because it would just cheapen the experience. Firstly, there are many aspects of Joker's character that you could explore in the second movie. In Joker 2, it showed the exploration of Arthur handling being in Arkham, him going on trial, and how the world reacted to him. This is a lot of content from this character, so in fact, it wouldn't cheapen anything. If done well, the audience can have this deeper exploration of the understanding of how Arthur handles different situations and the world around him.
So, like the rest of you, I was a bit perplexed when I found out that Joker was getting a sequel, and even more concerned when it was announced as a musical co-starring Lady Gaga. But just like everyone else, I tried to suppress my doubts and ignore that nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach that this movie was fundamentally a bad idea.
I believe that Joker 2 makes sense having those musical aspects. In the first movie, Arthur was always dancing, singing. When he came out on the Murray Show, he was doing these spins, being super theatrical. Therefore, the concern wasn't there. Just because it was announced as a musical, that didn't sway me to think that fundamentally, this movie was a bad idea.
Yeah, there's definitely good elements in there. You can see that talented people were working on this movie.
Before his criticisms of the movie, he has to do his routine of unzipping pants. It mentions how you can see that talented people were working on this movie. Irrelevant glaze before making critiques.
But overall, Joker 2 felt like a dull, bloated, and ultimately unnecessary movie that failed to answer the question that's dogged it since the beginning. Why does this film even exist?
A lot to unpack. His critique of the movie being unnecessary is just dog shit. Let me ask you, what is a movie that needs to be made? Why would the first Joker movie be necessary? Iron Man, Interstellar. Was any of these movies necessary? Or are they just stories that usually entertain us? Not something that needed to exist?
Now, I know it's just come out and I don't want to spoil it for people, so I'm going to keep my plot summary short and sweet, unlike this fucking movie. So with that in mind, let's go. The story picks up shortly after the events of the first film, where Arthur Fleck has been arrested and locked up in Arkham Asylum while he awaits trial for all the murders that he committed. His lawyer wants to plead insanity, while the prosecutor Harvey Dent's pushing for the death penalty. Bad times indeed. But while he's at Arkham, he meets a young woman named Lee Quinn and soon starts a bit of a romance with her. But is it really Arthur that she's into, or is Joker personality? And what's her true motivation for being there? Well, you'll have to wait and find out.
Motherfucker. You're trying to be spoiler free, yet bring up all these questions about Quinn's motivation. So of course the viewer's gonna sit there and go, she's probably into Joker's personality and has ulterior motivations. Come on, dipshit. I mean, later in the video, you literally say that Quinn is a manipulative fatal that is stringing Joker along.
The thing is, I'm pretty sure that the comic version of Quinn was more like the Joker's plaything rather than a manipulative femme fatale stringing him along, but again, it probably fits with what we know about this version of Joker.
You tried to be spoiler free, failed by setting up all those questions, just for in the end to bluntly say what she is. You suck.
And I guess that brings me along to my criticisms, the biggest of which is the deconstruction of Arthur himself. The ending of the first movie saw him fully embrace his Joker persona, shedding the last remnants of his old, weak, victimized personality and embracing the madness of the world around him. It was a logical endpoint for a man who had been desperately trying to swim against the tide for most of the film, and it was kind of cathartic to see him finally let go. It was a final fuck you to the world that had kicked him to the ground again and again, a world reduced to fire and chaos. All of that good work seems to have been undone here, because for most of the film he's reverted to the same weak, timid Arthur that he was at the start of the first movie. And I can't shake the feeling that there's something almost mean-spirited in that kind of deconstruction, as if they're taking a swipe at the audience themselves for liking someone they weren't supposed to. I don't know, man, it just feels like character regression instead of development for me.
On to his criticisms. I do agree with him in how Joker character has been reverted, which is mean-spirited and taking a swipe at the audience themselves for liking the original Joker. I don't know, man, just feels like character regression instead of development. My nigga, that is just what it is. You explained how his character regressed, so obviously that's not development. Fuck you mean? I don't know, it feels like.
Then there's the musical numbers that pepper the narrative. I can't believe I'm saying this because normally I fucking hate musicals, but I actually kind of enjoyed the sheer spectacle and performances while I was watching them. Ha! Gay!
He is using this gay joke of him liking the musical in a negative connotation. It seems that he is so fragile to enjoy something without people assuming he is gay, he has to be the person to say it first. Is it bad to be gay, Critical Drinker? Is that the joke?
And most disappointingly of all, I actually found myself kind of bored and checked out at times, something that absolutely never happened with the original movie.
In the end, I agree with how he talked about how the movie makes you feel bored and checked out, as I also think that Joker 2 is a bad film.
As I said before, the question hanging over Joker 2 was, is this a story that really needed to be told, or is it just a bunch of talented people doing their best to elevate a studio-mandated sequel into something that it isn't? Well, now that I've seen it, I'm afraid I know the answer. And it's not a good one.
Again, I went over this earlier point of how a story that is needed to be told is dumb. On to the next part. How does he know the people working on this film were trying their best to elevate a studio-mandated sequel? How does he know the movie is studio-mandated? Why the fuck am I asking these questions? Let's just search it up. Wait. Are you telling me that Critical Drinker is a liar? Not only does information provided in this article provide the information that Joker 2 wasn't studio mandated, but in articles they discuss how Joaquin Phoenix, one of those talented people Critical Drinker mentioned, who worked on the film, had dreamt up the idea for a sequel and pitched it to director Todd Phillips. Joaquin at a film festival said the idea never brought upon something, although the situation isn't as black and white, as the movie was studio mandated, and the evidence shows that people who worked on this film wanted a sequel to the first film. This is where the video on Joker 2 ends. Even when discussing a movie that is such a clear slam dunk on how bad it is, you fail as a critic. This video's entire conclusion of the movie being necessary was a stupid argument. You failed that your shitty spoiler-free review of the film showed how fragile you are, and most damningly provided incorrect information at the end of your video. Your criticisms were correct on how Joker 2 was bad, and yet embarrassingly, your video was still filled with all this bullshit. And now I have to discuss Moist Critical. When Moist Critical, aka Charlie, isn't commentating on random videos, he often partakes in movie reviews. I would like to discuss his video on Sinners to show how it fails in a lot of aspects.
First and foremost, I think the trailers lead people to believe that it's something that it's not, a horror film. And this isn't a complaint or anything. I just feel like, I've talked about it on stream quite a bit, there's a lot of people under the impression that this is supposed to be a scary movie. I don't think that's the case. I just personally don't think it fits into that category, and a lot of people, at least when I've talked about it, have written it off as just like a horror slop film, and that's just so disingenuous.
I firstly want to talk about his claim here, as he states that the movie doesn't fit into the horror genre category. Though I'm having a difficult time trying to understand an argument that it's not. For starters, not only did this movie try to invoke fear from scenes such as the snake jump scare, using tons of unsettling imagery throughout the film, showing characters turning into vampires, and definitely an emphasis on exploring dark themes. All these stockpiled on top of each other, I can't see it any other way. If the argument was that this film isn't as scary as other horror movies, then I could agree. There are definitely horror movies like The Shining, where the bear scene evokes more than just a jump scare, but aims to have an after-lasting effect on the audience. The type of shit that makes you stay up at night. It is scarier because of things like sound design, the eerie chanting, the way the creature slowly turns to Wendy. I can see that Sinners isn't as chilling as this, but to completely take it out of the horror genre I believe is incorrect. Also, buddy, it's literally listed as a horror movie lock-in. Then later through his explanation, it seems that he made a contradictory statement. His initial argument is that the movie isn't scary enough to be horror.
Like, it's not a film that's trying to focus primarily on making the viewer fucking throw popcorn in their face out of fear and panic and wetting their britches. Like, that's not what the movie sets out to do. Like, yes, there's some unnerving scenes. They're there for a purpose other than just being boo to the viewers. There's like 2 or 3 jump scares in the movie.
Then right after, you said the movie did do that 2 or 3 times. At the end, he says,
but just because they're jump scares doesn't automatically categorize it as a horror film.
So if it doesn't automatically categorize it, what the fuck was all that rigmarole bullshit you just spent the first 2 minutes establishing in your video? Hello, and anybody home?
I've yapped about this for a minute here.
Yes.
So I think this is a movie that a lot of people are really going to enjoy because it offers something very creative and very different.
On to this now. You call the movie creative and different, But what does this information generally provide? I think a majority of people will see the movie and intuitively know this. Though you don't explain this praise, you say nothing after, so as a viewer, this gives me no value. Let's do a little workshop, shall we? A good example would be to say the movie is creative and different by being set in the 1930s, which on top of the element of having vampires, the characters have to face racial injustice of the KKK, which then impacts how certain characters are treated. That's definitely different. Shit, go in depth, Charlie. Research. A video by this week's movie explains how they use a tech dolly that allows the filmers to create the same camera shot multiple times. They use literal beeps to show where the actors and props would be at certain timings. Due to that, each take the actors did would be the same, which then makes it easier to overlay both of the characters Michael B. Jordan plays. You see how this is automatically better and the praise is justified, not grabbed out of thin air?
Towards the second half of the film, the vampires get introduced. And without getting into spoilers, the way that they use vampires here I think is really smart and different from what I've seen in other vampire movies. It of course uses like classic lore of needing to be invited in, which I always thought was one of the more humorous elements of vampires. But here, it's really tense when they play with that.
When he begins to talk here about the vampires in the movie, which he believes is different and smart from what he's seen in other vampire movies, you're saying here it is really tense when they play with that idea that a vampire cannot enter a building without first being invited in. You're edging me. Say something insightful.
Because if you don't invite them in, they're kind of fucking harmless. You can just kind of hunker down until the sun comes up. But it's not so simple. And I think they do a great job.
You're saying how the vampires are harmless if you don't invite them in and wait until the sun comes up. You're saying this in a goofy connotation though, so I'm still waiting for you to lock in and justify why this makes the movie smart. You try to make a point about how the movie is smart, and then you give me an explanation on how the movie is being silly. Also, what do you mean? It is that simple. That's the literal mechanic of how it works. The way you are speaking is confusing me. You know, I hear what you're saying, but I'm deaf. I'm seeing the vision. Like, Twin, I'm seeing the vision, but I'm blind. Buddy, is your brain a paradox?
Sammy's music is what draws that group of vampires to the juke joint in the first place. The main vampire, he wants Sammy because he believes that his music can help connect him to his old friends. And it's established very early on in the movie that sometimes a musician is so talented, it can, call upon the past and even the future. And there's a scene in the middle of the movie where he's delivering an incredible performance at the juke joint. And while delivering that performance, there's like old musicians from many years ago. And then, and it's very cool to see, it's a very cool scene. And then it's modern musicians. So there's a musician playing the electric guitar, and then there's someone with a DJ turntable, and there's someone breakdancing. And it went from like really cool and like, oh, it's nice to see that concept they were talking about, like explored visually here. But then when I'm seeing them like spin the turntable while breakdancing, the scene kind of got like a little silly, and it went on for a long time. Now, narratively, it's a very powerful scene, and I get what it's talking about, and I understand why it's there. It's just, I feel like maybe it went on a little too long when they kept bringing in modern elements from the future there, because this is a movie set in the 1930s. So it just felt weird having like the turntable and the breakdancing, which it's supposed to feel weird, but in a way that I thought kind of got a little comical.
The scene that he's referencing, where Sammy's music calls upon the future and the past. I mean, the movie is showing us the future and the past. You understand why it's there. If they didn't show the modern elements with the DJ, the scene wouldn't make any sense. It's to show how the music calls upon the future and the past. Also, I kid you not, this scene lasts for just about 2 minutes. So I don't really get why you're harping over the fact that it lasted for a long time.
What I think wasn't fully explored very well was the concept itself, though, because the movie talks about, like, music and how Sammy, who is the son of a preacher, he doesn't like the music. He thinks it's a bad thing. And it's something that Sammy very much disagrees with, obviously. And they talk about the music like it's supposed to be the ultimate tool for good, really. And ultimately what happens in the second half of the film, the music never really feels like it was used for good. So like he plays that song, The Vampires Come, and I thought it would end with him delivering another musical performance, because towards the end he is, gripping the guitar and he hits the vampire with it, and I thought it'd be something about music that's able to, save the day. But that's not the case. It wasn't the music that saved everyone, it was guns and wooden stakes. So, which is fine, because the action was really cool. Like, it was a good action sequence at the end. I thought they did a good job with it. It was bloody, over the top, and it was satisfying. But I don't know, I guess I just kind of expected, since it was a big part of the film, the music, about like, it's evil. No, it's not. Music is great. I thought that was going to be the moment where it triumphs and it shows the music is so powerful. Not only can it project, the past and the future, but look at how it can, heal and everything.
You also know what hasn't been explored well? Every point your video has tried to make. Charlie, how would you expect music to save the day? Did you want Sammy to use the guitar and flying notes appear and kill Remick? Or a certain frequency destroys the vampires? Yes, music brought harm to Sammy, but it still brought him value. Like he said in the future, before all of this shit happened with the vampires, it was the best day of his life. Because he values music so deeply, even choosing it over his religion. He's not gonna abandon music. The music brought everyone together. Like I said, the message is clearly what I just established. An idea that I played around with though, is that instead of Remick being stabbed in the back, and that's where he dies, instead Sammy would have killed Remick when he picked up the guitar and hit him. Then you could say symbolically how Sammy chose music and defeated evil with it.
But I've also seen it been said by a lot of people that this is the best vampire movie ever made, or the best vampire movie made in like the last 10 years. I don't know about that. It's not really a vampire movie until, like, the end. Like, at the end of the film, the vampires come in, and even during those moments, it's not like it's all about the vampires. It's still mainly about the characters inside of the juke joint.
Okay, you're pushing my buttons now. Not a fucking vampire movie? Not a vampire movie. Bro, what the... Bro.
So, like... I wouldn't say it's like the best vampire movie ever made. It just uses vampires really, really well. Anyway, though, I really like the movie, obviously. I definitely think it's worth seeing.
Okay, you just said it wasn't a vampire movie, and then turn around and say that it isn't the best vampire movie ever made. Then on top of that, you say they use vampires really, really well. This is what I'm talking about. This video is an incoherent mess. Not a vampire movie, but actually it's not the best vampire movie. Oh, so is it a vampire movie? Not the best vampire movie, but actually it uses vampires extremely well. This video is horrible, and I'm astonished that content like this can garner such a high viewership count. This video is extremely incoherent. Points were not justified. This is what I would expect if I went out to a bar and asked a drunk man to give me a summary of the movie Sinners. One of the top comments of your video is extremely telling. I'm so glad I decided to go see it. The scene where Sammy's voice transcends time and summons spirits from past and present was so powerful. It's crazy how a viewer assessed why that scene was so powerful and didn't even engage with their critique of it, because either it was so incoherent they didn't understand you, or so nonsense they didn't even give you the time of day to engage with it. You failed at summarizing the movie, critiquing, and giving praise. With that, I feel my brain slowly melting. I hope to have achieved my goal with this video on how not to write a movie review. Let me know what you think if you want to hear more of me. I plan to be more active on Twitter and release more content during the summer. If you have been following my channel for a while, I hope to upload more frequently, and thank you for watching. My next videos will be surrounding the morality of boxing, other movies, or whatever you guys want me to talk about. Shout out to Sauce for reacting to the most critical video with me. His links will be down below. Peace.